Can I ask you to turn the clock forward now, though, to kind of where we are today? Because I think it's fair to say that the geopolitical stars are not in such not in the same alignment now as then, to put it charitably. And of course, progress against the targets then hasn't been exactly as we would wish either. So, what is your sense of kind of where we are now, both in geopolitical terms and in terms of kind of making good on the commitments that you managed to secure back in 2015?
Yeah, as you say, I think you understate the tragic status of geopolitics now. Just the very difficult relationship just between the United States and China to begin with, or between Russia and the rest of the world, is really of huge concern and is leading to a lot of pain, certainly in the Ukraine, but not only. So geopolitics is definitely not with us at all. And at the same time, what is very interesting is side by side with the completely unforgivable pain and suffering that has been occasioned on the Ukrainian people, without minimizing that at all. But side by side with that, one of the unintended consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is the fact that the world has woken up to the perils of continuing to depend on fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are typically produced and exported by regimes that are not very dependable. Prime example, Russia. And that has been a huge wake-up call, that stems from politics, right? But that is having a political economy effect, because the desire now to strengthen energy independence, domestic independence, is stronger than ever. There is not a nation that wants to continue to depend on erratically priced, unpredictable imports of fossil fuels produced by regimes that are irresponsible. And so that has had a very interesting impact, as I say, on the investment into renewables. So just to give you a couple of facts. This year, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, headquartered in Paris, maximum energy authority of the world, has already come out to say that this year, the world will add 440 gigawatts of new renewable capacity. That's a huge jump from last year, and in fact, it's more than double of what was added in 2019. And here's the astonishing fact. It's 24% more than the IEA predicted was going to be added just 6 months ago, because the investment into renewables is just going completely bonkers. It's going exponential. Few facts on that one. 5 years ago, we invested $1 trillion into fossil fuels and the same into clean energy. It was basically shoulder to shoulder. This year, we're still investing $1 trillion into fossil fuels, but we're investing $1.7 trillion into clean energy. So that means that we have actually turned a corner with energy. And let's remember that energy is the prime producer of greenhouse gases. I actually would love to quote, if I can find it quickly, a recent study from Rocky Mountain Institute that looks at this energy transition. Yeah. So this recent study, and I quote, "At the heart of the energy transition lies the fact that renewable technologies are far superior to fossil fuels. The energy transition is a shift from a concentrated, expensive, polluting, commodity-based system with no learning curve to an efficient, manufactured, technology-driven system that offers continuously falling costs and is available everywhere. It is moving from heavy, fiery molecules to light, obedient electrons, from hunting for fossil fuels to farming the sun." I have never read anything as clear as that, because I would argue, and this, I'm really going to go out on a limb here, I would argue that geopolitics is no longer as necessary as it was way back in 2015, because geopolitics was then really, really critical to set the agreed upon guidelines or guardrails for the decarbonization of the economy. But those have been set. Read the Paris Agreement. Now it's about implementing the Paris Agreement. And yes, if we had all countries as aligned as the United States is now with the IRA, or as aligned as the EU, or as Australia is now with their new government, then of course we would be accelerating, and there's no doubt that we are delayed. There's no doubt that we're delayed. But I would argue that the political economy and the positive characteristics of renewable energy are now so compelling that the market forces are now much more important than the geopolitical forces, and that the market forces are actually already taking electricity generation from renewables, electrification of light vehicles. Certainly, both of those are going exponential very quickly. And right behind them, we will see the electrification of heavier transport with heavy trucks by land or ships or even aviation. All of that will actually be decarbonized in spaces of time that we would never have imagined 10 years ago. So all of that, the energy sector is going exponential in its decarbonization because it's a better technology and because it gives everyone energy independence. Where we are definitely not on time at all and not going exponential at all is everything to do with nature. Everything to do with land use, everything to do with regenerative agriculture, with stopping deforestation, with protecting mangroves. All of that is way behind, way, 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 way behind. There is no good, compelling business model behind that. There is narrative that is sort of coming out, but it still is a sort of a moral obligation-based narrative that is not a narrative that sits squarely within the market economy, sadly, because economists have still not internalized the externalities that they call into everything that has to do with land use and with nature. And if they ever do, or as soon as they do, that narrative will fundamentally change overnight. But here's a little call to economics to update their profession, please, as soon as possible. But as long as that is so, everything to do with nature is way behind schedule. But the Paris effect that has been written about in several pieces is alive and well in the energy sector.
Yeah. Well, what you say about the change in the step change in the dynamics of this is really interesting, Christiana, actually, and the way you've captured it has made me think afresh about it, actually, because we had, of course, a couple of centuries of countries competing for vice when it came to polluting the planet. We then needed a degree of global cooperation to bring that to an end. And that is what Paris was about. But now we might be in a different mode again, where actually we have countries competing for virtue on this front. In a way, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act and the fact that others are feeling duty bound to do more themselves on this front is a competition for virtue among countries.
Or a competition for protection.
Yeah, and that as well, for security.
You know, it's not just a morality thing. It's also a morality thing, virtue, right? But it's also, if it were only a morality thing, I don't know that we would be where we are, right?
You're
I
right.
think
Virtue and value and security.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
All of the above.
Yes, it's both value and values.
Value and values is a great way of capturing it. And actually, you've given me real grounds for optimism on that. I think that change in dynamic is all the difference in the world, because then it will be less reliant on the geopolitics, because the pure forces, if you like, of competition will help bring us home.